One person can't know everything, and they're one person. They can't be attuned to where society should be.
I'm John Starr, advisor at Thorn.
I'm Paylez Halai, Senior Manager of Partnerships at Thorn.
And this is Safe Space. Welcome, David. As a fan and follower of All Tech is Human, I'm extra excited to talk to you today, to get to meet you, I guess, sort of in person for the first time.
It's close enough, but hopefully in person sometime soon.
Indeed. As you know, this podcast is really about the humans working behind the scenes in trust and safety that are writing policy, enforcing it, working on product interventions. And now you are a self-proclaimed not a tech guy. In fact, you're an attorney and educator, yet you've managed to really build a community of folks adjacent to our field. And that community that you've created continues to mobilize and really create a lot of powerful commentary and powerful discussion with respect to our field. Before we jump into your journey, I'd love for you to take a moment to really outline what All Tech is Human is and what a day-to-day in the life of David looks like.
The day-to-day is actually quite busy, but I take that as a good thing. For example, I DM'd somebody on our Slack. We have a very large Slack community, about 12,000 members across 107 countries. And John, you were talking about me not having a tech background. Well, turns out a lot of people in trust and safety don't have a traditional tech background. So even my background as an attorney, frankly, is very common in the trust and safety space. You have a lot of people who are attorneys who have a policy background. They usually just don't put that very forward. So they're going to drop the Esquire or the JD behind their name. But just generally speaking, when we're talking about All Tech is Human, which I founded here in New York, where I'm speaking to you from in 2018, really saw the need to bring all these humans together, all these different backgrounds to actually surface important values, tensions, trade-offs, and best practices. Especially when you have an area like trust and safety that deals with the speech online, safety online. These are all very subjective areas where we need to actually come together and say, what are our shared values? What does a better web experience look like? These aren't something that we would just want to have one person decide. So in fact, I would argue that a lot of problems that have plagued social media since its founding have happened because we've over-indexed on a certain technical background. And I think one of the big things I've noticed with All Tech is Human, really one of the privileges that I have is I get to interact literally with thousands of people, right? Mm-hmm. So, which is kind of cool. But one of the things you notice is, frankly, there's a lot of frustration in the space because a few years ago, you had a lot of the leaders of large tech companies effectively say, hey, we couldn't have predicted the problems that have happened with social media. We couldn't have predicted all of these ways that bad actors could abuse a system. But you always had people on the side who were saying, hey, hold on here. Have we thought about all the ways that this could be abused? Have we thought about the education that needs to happen in school systems? Have we thought about how we empower youth to make better decisions? Have we talked about the business structures, right? Like these are complex tech and society issues. These are not just technical types of scenarios. So I think that's the misnomer that we really want to disabuse ourselves of, because
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, when you talk about tech, and even All Tech is Human, right? It's got tech in the name. And one of the funny parts is tech is a loaded word. I remember in 2012 when I really started getting active in the space, and I think I did a TEDx, and that caused a few groups to reach out and really caused a lot of speaking opportunities and consulting and things of that nature. So one of the issues I had early on is because we're talking about social media, emerging technology, they would basically say, we've got David Ryan Polgar. He's coming to us. He's a tech expert. He's a gadget guy, right? So at the time,
right,
they were always just thinking tech and hey, what's the newest app on your phone, as opposed to saying, how is this technology affecting how we live, love, learn, even die? How is it impacting human connection, communication? how do we create that's safer type of experience? So I really had the opportunity to get involved with a lot of startups kind of early on who are thinking about trust and safety, and one thing kind of leads to another as
Yeah.
you grow inside this ecosystem.
Yeah, and clearly, well, I mean, speaking as another self-proclaimed not a tech guy and certainly a problem finder, I can totally resonate with the concepts that you brought up. And clearly, you've spent a lot of time thinking about these issues, building community within these issues. And for me, I want to take a step back. I want to really clearly, you're a community builder.
Yes.
Did your ambitions as a young person reflect that? What were some things as you were growing up and starting to plot a career path out in this space or just in your space? What were some ambitions that you had?
I always wanted to bring people together. I always saw complex issues as benefiting from a diverse range of thoughts coming together. So even before I got into this specific space of responsible tech and trust and safety, responsible AI, right? They all kind of merge. I always was holding kind of these mixers when I was living in Connecticut. So now I live in Manhattan. I used to live in West Hartford, Connecticut, grew up in upstate New York. But during that entire time, I would always want to create social gatherings, because books that really influenced me would be ones like Sherry Turkle's Alone Together or Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. So I think one of the important parts that I think some people get with All Tech is Human is that it is merging two major crises, right? One, we can't tackle hard problems because we don't have a great approach to it. And I would argue it's because we've had this kind of hyper-individualization, since the 60s in the United States, kind of caused this situation where we're always saying that one person can solve the issue. Even when you think about how the media portrays people like Zuckerberg or Musk, we're treating it as one person should be the alpha and the omega. They should be smart enough to figure out every issue. I severely reject that idea because I think it is highly egotistical and also just like inherently wrong because one person can't know everything and they're one person. They can't be attuned to where society should be, right? Because they're going to have their own kind of perspective and lived experiences and their own limitations. So I always saw this need to actually say, how do we move away from this, what I like to call this like TEDification of life, where we think one great thought leader is going to solve everything. No matter how smart I try to be, right? And I read for hours every day. Every day I wake up and I read the New York Times, the New York Post. You feel like you can't keep up. But no matter how much you try to educate yourself on these issues, you're always going to need other people's ideas and perspectives. So to kind of go full circle with that, when I was thinking about All Tech is Human, again, as I mentioned, started in 2018, I was really trying to combine this crisis of connection with the fact that we have these hard problems, like the rise of CSAM on, social media platforms and the internet at large and the dark web. Those two are directly connected because everything deals with technology now. Everything is filtered through tech. It affects every aspect of our lives. And also, one of the reasons why we can't solve these issues, in my opinion, is because we don't come together to actually weigh these different trade-offs. So even when you talk about areas like some of the struggles with social media platforms and the distribution of illicit content, specifically around child safety, as you well know, like one of the struggles there has been it's at loggerheads with different advocacy groups. So you have child safety advocates, but then on the flip side, you have privacy advocates, especially if you look at some of the issues in the EU and the UK that they fight around like end-to-end encryption, right? So one of the things that I think is beneficial by a system like All Tech is Human, and of course I'm biased, right? However, the reason why I think a system like that is necessary is because it doesn't matter how passionate you are, you also need to understand what are the inherent trade-offs with any kind of system. So you might recall a few years ago, there was a major incident where Apple with their iPhone was going to have a CCM detection tool. And that had a PR crisis because it ran headfirst into Apple's kind of well-known association with privacy advocates. Obviously, those two are not mutually exclusive, right? It's not a binary decision between privacy and child safety. However, because it wasn't able to successfully weave in these inherent trade-offs and then deal beforehand with some of these major issues, it became very unfortunate where something that could be really beneficial to the safety of children, and which is a bipartisan issue, which is something that everybody, no matter where they are in the political spectrum, cares about kids,
Sure.
right? So that should be a no-brainer. And I think one of the parts that motivates me personally is the fact that you have such major, horrible issues, right? But then we're not moving forward enough. So I've always seen All Tech is Human as kind of this hybrid. You could call it a think, do tank. It's a community organization. But generally speaking, we focused on 3 different parts of laying down this relational infrastructure, now of a community of about 50 to 55,000, this responsible tech kind of movement that combines trust and safety, like I mentioned, issues like responsible AI, youth tech well-being, but then also creating this conducive environment to tackle hard problems. That, I think, is the important part, because we don't have a conducive space.
Yeah, and I think to this point, I think you clearly bring up a lot of important points. One, I think that setting the environment for a problem to be solved or a team to be successful is a really key part of it. I also think that it's around aligning the incentives around having these conversations and building up with one another. I think to your points on having it be maybe more of an oversimplified binary wrong or right. This is just part of the conversation with David Polgar. You can catch more highlights and the full Safe Space episode here.